Hello and welcome to our Cambridgeshire rental market update for April 2026. If you own a rental property in Cambridgeshire, are thinking about renting one out, again, remarketing, or you're considering whether to sell or keep your investment, this update is definitely worth watching because the headline is simple. The rental market is still buoyant. Demand is still outstripping supply. Rents remain strong, and not surprisingly, well-presented homes are continuing to let quickly. But here's another really interesting trend that we saw in April. Owners who tried to sell are now coming back onto the rental market, and in many cases, obviously, it's because the sale simply didn't happen or they didn't achieve what they wanted to. We are seeing that properties that were taken out of the rental market 6, 7, even 9 months ago are now returning to rent. And often these are good homes that would have rented very well, but obviously the owner wanted to sell, test the sales market. And that's why the property has been sitting empty. And in that, we've worked out that the owner would have lost thousands of rented pounds, not only in rental income, but mortgage payments, utility costs, anything. For some of those people, that loss has easily been anything between £7,000 to £10,000. And that's why this market update really matters, because before you decide whether to sell, whether to rent, hold or invest, you need proper local data, not national headlines, not online panic, real Cambridgeshire rental figures. So let's start with some of those figures. What area are we working in? If you look at from Alconbury to Cambridge, down the A14 and all the surrounding villages, that's where I'm getting these figures from. So across that main area, the average monthly rent is just under £1,200, and that's a 6% increase year on year. And looking at property sizes, one bedroom are now averaging £922 a month, two bedroom now averaging £1,074 a month, three bedrooms are averaging £1,298 a month, and four bedrooms are averaging around £1,700 per month. And because we look at things from a postcode perspective, we can go deeper. CB23 saw notable increases for one and three bedroom homes, and P29 saw increases for two and four bedroom homes. And that's why postcode level information is so valuable. A national average doesn't tell you what your property should achieve. Your location matters, your property type matters. So, what was advertised in April? Available rental stock in the Cambridgeshire area was up 19% compared with April last year. Now, some people may hear that and think that is really worrying, but it's not the whole story, because let agreed numbers are also up by 12% year on year. And that means the market is still moving. There are more homes available, but there are more homes being let. So the message is not panic, the message is prepare. The difference now is that landlords need to get the price, the presentation, and the compliance right. Now, Rightmove data is showing that the average yield locally is around about 6.5%. They don't say that whether that's net or gross, but as always, the key in the numbers is getting the numbers right from the start. If you buy well, you price correctly, you present properly, stay compliant, and manage professionally, that's where the strongest results will actually come from. I'd mentioned that we'd seen some owners returning to the rental market after being for sale for anything up to 9 months. And this was especially noticeable with three-bedroom homes. Now, an empty property is an expensive proposition in my mind. There's no rental coming in. The bills will still need paying. The mortgage, in some cases, will still need paying. There will definitely be council tax, insurance, utilities, and maintenance and general holding costs. So when you add everything together, the cost of waiting for a sale can be significant. Now, that doesn't mean that selling is wrong. For some of you, selling is absolutely the right choice. But it does mean the decision needs to be made with proper numbers, an understanding of what's going on in the market. What's the realistic sale price? How long might it take to sell? What rent could the property achieve now? What would the annual yield be if you continued to rent? And what's the actual cost of leaving it empty? These are the questions that protect your return. And the good news is that for many owners, coming back into the rental market, demand is still there, especially for good quality, well-presented homes. As I'd mentioned, 3-bedroom homes are really performing well. They continue to attract a real wide range of people. They look at families because they want to grow. Couples planning ahead want them. People working from home want them. And there are still a lot of those. And relocating people into the area want them because of storage. And because you've got a high percentage of families that want them, you've got stability. Because 3-bedroom homes, definitely we're seeing longer tenancies, which can be very positive for owners. A good long-term resident can mean fewer void periods, less disruption, and a more predictable income. Now, demand is still outstripping supply, so let's talk about demand. It's still really buoyant across the total area that we manage, including Cambridge Town, St Ives, Huntingdon, Ely, and all of those surrounding villages. People are moving for work, families are needing more space, and some residents are relocating in the area to buy. Others are renting because buying remains really difficult. The deposit needed to buy a home is still a major barrier for many people. And even where the monthly mortgage looks very similar to the monthly rental payment, ownership does come with extra costs and responsibilities. For example, if the boiler breaks in a rental home, the resident doesn't need to pay for it. We, the landlord, do. And you're looking at around about now anything from up to £1,500 to £3,000. And that matters. Renting gives people flexibility. It lets them move for work, try a new area, or live in a home without taking the full cost of ownership. So demand for rental property has not disappeared, far from it. But what has changed is that residents are more selective and can be, since there are slightly more properties on the market. They've got more choice, so they are comparing homes more carefully, and they're looking at the price. They're looking at the condition that it's being presented in. They're looking at the photos initially, and they're looking at how well the property appears to be managed. And that means that landlords need to compete properly. More choice doesn't mean less opportunity, because if your property is presented well, priced correctly, marketed properly, there's still really strong demand. But on the flip side, if it's overpriced, a bit tired, poorly photographed, or badly described, it may sit longer than expected. And void periods are where owners can lose money really quickly. Sometimes trying to achieve that extra £50 or £100 per month can backfire if the property then sits empty for several weeks. A realistic rent achieved quickly with a good resident can often produce a better result than chasing that higher figure and losing income during a void. And this is where I come back to local data. It's so important. Compliance is one thing that must be mentioned with the oncoming Renters' Rights Bill. We can't talk about the rental market without talking about compliance. I said bill, it's an act. The act's definitely changed the landscape. There's more for owners to understand. There's more responsibility and there's more risks if things aren't handled properly. But this is really important. Compliance hasn't damaged the rental market. It's just made it more professional. The owners who will do well are those ones who take their responsibilities seriously, but actually understanding their responsibilities more important. They keep their properties in good condition, they price fairly and work with proper advice. A compliant property isn't just safer, it reduces the chance of disputes, it protects your income, and it gives everyone more confidence in what's going on. So I'll come back to that's why professional management is becoming more important. The market is no longer simply about finding a resident and collecting rent. It's about protecting the property, protecting you, the landlord, supporting the resident and keeping everything on the right side of the rules and the law. So what do I think you should take from this? Well, from the owner, the April update, first of all, the market's buoyant. Demand is still outstripping supply and rents are still up year on year. Fourth, owners who try to sell are coming back into the rental market because selling hasn't worked out for everyone. 5, residents have more choice, so pricing and presentation really, really matter. And finally, compliance is essential, but it should not put serious owners off. In fact, for owners who are prepared, this is still a strong market. The opportunity, they're out there, but the approach needs to be slightly different than before. It needs to be more professional. At Maxine Leicester, we share this information freely because we believe that owners need clear local insight. We manage properties in your area, so we actually see what is happening on the ground. We know what's letting, we know where rents are moving and where they're stalling, and we know what residents are looking for. And we know how to help landlords reduce risk, reduce voids, and make informed decisions. So, if you're thinking about renting out a property, returning a property to the rental market, reviewing your rent, or deciding whether to sell or to hold, why don't you talk to us before making your next move? A short conversation could save you thousands. Get in touch with the team now for a data-led rental review just by pressing the button below. We look forward to talking with you.